I'm so happy to introduce you today's guest, Chuck Hahn. Chuck is considered the Godfather of Australian Brewing. He was the chief brewer for the Lion Nathan Group and created many well-known household brands such as Hahn Premium, James Squire, Kosciuszko Pale Ale, as well as earlier in his life, the Coors Light brand. Please welcome Dr. Chuck Hahn. So thanks again for coming in. And look, I've always wanted to know your journey, and of course, I've done obviously a little bit of research into how you got to where you got to today. But I wanted to talk to you about some parts of your life, personal as well as professional, and what you had to do to get to where you are today. And I wanted to kind of start off with, when you, your childhood, right? Like I read that your father was, in the army and he traveled a lot, and that's why you traveled a lot. So, you didn't really settle down until you were in Colorado studying, correct?
Right.
Yeah. So, tell me a bit about your childhood. I mean, what was that like to get, for you to get to the path of studying chemical engineering?
Yeah. Well, I think we had my father was a career Army officer,
sure,
West Pointer, and of course we moved every 2 or 3 years. And so you don't form any really close friends, but you form a lot of friends.
Yeah.
But we always had a strong family unit, and we would go, camping in the summer at all these different places and traveling around a bit. But I found it very easy to meet people then. And when I finished up, when I started in Colorado, my last 2 years of high school were actually in Washington State, in Tacoma, Washington.
Yeah.
And the 3 years before that, the junior high and high school was in Okinawa.
Oh, wow.
And so it came all the way back across there. And then after finishing up in Washington, at Washington State, and then I decided I wanted to go into engineering, chemical engineering. And so I looked at either MIT, looked at Colorado School of Mines, looked at some colleges in California. But it turned out I think Colorado had the best skiing, so I decided that was the place to go. So I journeyed back across then, and at the same time, my father got transferred back to Washington D.C. to the Pentagon.
Oh wow, yeah.
So he had a couple years there before he finally retired.
Yeah,
but so I was in Colorado, and I took ROTC. Reserve Officer Training Corps for the 4 years, and then I took a active duty commission when I finished up.
Wow, yeah.
But during that time, that was in 1968. Most people were going across to Vietnam.
Yeah.
And I figured, with my current degree, I wanted to go on for a PhD. So
sure.
I was able to get deferred from active duty to do my PhD.
Just going back to when you were in Okinawa. I mean, how old were you then?
Well, that was in, let me think. So I was in, 8th, 9th, and 10th grades.
Sure.
So it was junior high and the first part of high school.
Yeah, wow. So you would have been like, 13, 14, of that age.
But we had a small sailboat. We would sail around the small island. Okinawa was a fairly small island, and we did a lot of diving and fishing,
sure,
and hiking around. And
did you find the cultural difference challenging, or not?
No,
particularly?
not really, because I had spent a couple years of elementary school in Japan.
Oh, okay.
And a few years before that,
so you're already pretty, used to Japan.
Yeah, I was very used to the Japanese culture.
Wow. So you've really seen a lot. Being, obviously, being the son of your father, who traveled around quite a bit, that definitely would have opened your eyes a little bit.
But back then, Okinawa was a U.S. territory.
Oh, okay.
Now it's part of Japan. In fact, we went back there. I had some speaking engagements in Japan last year, or a couple years back, and we were able to spend a weekend back down in Okinawa.
Wow!
So it's sort of a Japanese resort island now.
Bring back memories.
Yeah, it's amazing some of the same things are still there.
Yeah. That's
it's really, really quite something. So it was very easy to adjust to that.
Sure.
But of course, we went to an American school there in Okinawa. So,
Okay.
So it wasn't a Japanese or an Okinawan school.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
But,
So you were learning, obviously, the American curriculum.
Yeah, but I was able to take Japanese language lessons there.
Great.
And also in Japan when I was in Japan.
That's great.
But
what made you get into chemical engineering? I mean, it's, did you always, when you were growing up, think that you were someone that wants to do an engineering degree? I mean, obviously that's very, calculation based and factual and, logical based degree, right?
Well, to a certain extent. And I was always interested. In fact, one of the reasons I think going to Colorado School of Mines, and that's of course mines, MINES, not mines.
Yeah.
And it, because I was always interested in geology a little bit too, being an outdoors person.
Sure.
And then I decided, well, that didn't really have the future that the chemical engineering had, and you could actually build things and make things as a chemical engineer.
But why not, let's say, arts? What kind of led you down engineering, as per se?
Well, I think I was always, as a kid, I was always building things.
Okay, right.
I think that was part of it. So I was definitely going to be an engineer of some type.
Awesome.
I think.
Yep.
And the degrees I got from School of Mines was a combined degree in chemical engineering and petroleum refining.
Yeah. Wow.
And so it had a real slant towards the petrochemical business.
Sure.
And so I worked a couple of summers for Continental Oil.
Uh-huh.
And they wanted, when I finished up my doctorate, they wanted me to work for them.
Uh-huh.
But when you work for an oil company in the U.S., you end up down in Texas or Oklahoma.
That's
As
right.
you move up in the company, you go back to New York.
Yeah.
Well, I was enjoying the outside too much and the mountains and everything.
And the skiing.
And the skiing and the mountain climbing. And so I was able to create a job for myself at Coors.
Okay.
In their product development area.
Yeah.
And their quality control.
Because you said, at the time, how you got into Coors was because you used to go across the road to the Coors brewery, right?
Yeah. We used to go across the road, and they had always had a tasting room.
Oh,
So we go there and have our free samples of beer and write up our lab reports.
that's so good.
So it was really quite something else.
Yeah, and you, I know what I'd be doing if I was living or if I was studying across the road from a brewery.
Well, then I was teaching a course in engineering economics and investment decision methods.
Uh-huh.
Because I was on a fellowship there. So one of the students was actually one of the Coors sons.
Yeah.
Jeff Coors. And so we formed a relationship, and he was just starting up his research department. So I convinced him that he needed me to help him out.
That's great.
But, that's way back in 1971.
And he was a chemical engineer
He was
too.
a chemical engineer also, yeah. And so that's when I started. So I started, if I make it through next year, that'll be 50 years of brewing experience.
Wow, that's amazing.
Making beer for myself and everyone else to enjoy.
Oh, that's just such a great legacy you've left, and you'll continue to create new legacy. But you said earlier that you completed your first degree, and they basically wanted you to go in the war, but you wanted to continue on your study.
Yes, yeah.
And so they deferred you and allowed you to continue to do more studies. God, that must have been a scary moment to think, possibly you might be drafted and you might need to be going to war.
Well, I took a commission as a second lieutenant, so I was already in the Army.
Sure.
And so there's no thing, we were going to go at some time.
Yeah.
But they were deferring people. And so I decided, well, that's the best way to go, because I wanted to further my degree. I knew what I wanted to do. And my first degree was a professional engineering degree. So it was more than just a regular BS. It was almost like a master's degree. So they were going to let me go directly for my PhD.
Oh, wow.
And so that just took 3 more years.
Yeah.
And then I got called to active duty. By then the war had de-escalated. And they said, well, look, we only need you for 3 or 4 months, and then you'll be teaching at the engineering school back in Virginia. That period of time. Then you have a number of years of reserve duty. I say, oh, fine. That's great.
That's better than going to war, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you would have seen a lot of your colleagues actually go, right?
Oh, yes. A lot of my colleagues went.
And
most of them returned. Yeah.
Most of them returned, and some of them obviously didn't make it.
Yeah.
And that must have been, somewhat of a reality check, or pretty daunting to know that you potentially could have been there and been one of the guys that didn't come back.
Yeah.
Wow. So it really did work out better for you in this way.
Yes, I think so.
But you did your PhD on supercritical extraction techniques.
Yes. Well, you've done some research.
So, look, supercritical extraction techniques I'm quite familiar with, because being in coffee.
Coffee, yes.
That's how decaffeination.
Exactly.
One of the methods of decaffeination.
Yeah, and some of I was using supercritical propane for extraction, and under high pressures, and has very unique solvent properties.
Yeah.
And supercritical CO2 is also very obvious, and that's used a lot in decaffeination.
Yeah, so CO2's,
I was using both of those compounds.
Wow.
And to remove pollutants from wastewater.
Mm-hmm.
But and we developed some processes there, but I was under a National Science Foundation fellowship, so I couldn't patent any of that. But some of those same techniques are used for decaffeination.
Yeah.
Of coffee.
Of course, I've definitely, obviously, familiarized myself with some ways of decaffeination. I mean, now there's different methods like Swiss water, which is still carbon filtering, but supercritical extraction was definitely used for, still is being used today for decaffeination.
And we also use it for hop extracts. Because for making beer. Because the old process would use a organic solvent, a hexane.
Yeah, right.
And sometimes there's a little bit of residual hexane left in the hop extract, which is not really good for the beer.
No.
But you get extremely pure. And so it's both subcritical supercritical and just liquid CO2 extracts for hops gives you a very high degree of purity in hop extract. So I'm very familiar with that.
Yeah, of course. So that, you've developed essentially some of these techniques for brewing, right?
Yes, yeah. No, back then I was a real technocrat.
Yeah.
Now I'm just more of a marketing bullshitter, I think.
Look, I think you still are a technocrat, but you've just gotten better at marketing, I can say. But no, that those techniques are still very much used today, and I think you don't get enough credit for some of those papers that you published. And then, so in 1977, you were working in Coors, and so you dropped your. Did you finish your PhD? You finished your PhD?
I finished my PhD in 71.
Yeah, so 71, you finished your PhD, and then you obviously went into Coors. What did you do at Coors as your first?
Well, the first job I came into was in quality control.
Okay.
Quality control, then that extended quickly into R&D. And I was R&D director for a number of years.
Okay.
And then in charge of process and product development.
Yeah, wow.
And a lot of that, we developed some new products along the lines like Coors Light.
Yeah.
Which is one of your second largest selling beer in the U.S. now.
Yeah.
And that's light in carbohydrates, so it's not light in alcohol.
Yeah. So I remember talking to you a long time ago, and you were explaining that that was your recipe.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's, that beer is just everywhere, like I lived in Canada when I was back in 2005, I think. And Coors Light was just, it was just everywhere at the time. And, it's just what almost everyone drank, but alongside, a bunch of others like, Miller's and all that.
No, those are the leading beers. Because they were very sessionable.
Sure.
With lower carbohydrates. It wasn't bloating.
Yeah.
It wasn't that satiation effect you get.
Yeah.
And so,
I mean, did you find it difficult to develop, like obviously you had lots of ideas while you were working that role. Did you, have lots of ideas turned down, and did you have to go through some of that bureaucracy of like trying to get your ideas through? Because
a little bit. I mean, I also formed a very good relationship with Bill Coors.
Sure.
Who, because it was Bill and Joe Coors who were the two leaders, and then Jeff Coors was the son of Joe Coors.
Uh-huh.
But Bill Coors was in charge of operations, and so I formed a very good relationship with him.
Yeah, right.
Because I also was responsible for designing and commissioning lots of new equipment in the brewery, and we were expanding the brewery a lot. So I've really had very much of an in there.
And your degree came in handy there?
Oh, very, very handy there. So we developed other beers too. In fact, some with even more flavor. You might have seen the George Killian's Irish Red Ale.
Yes.
Okay, that was another one that we developed.
Wow.
I went over to Ireland and got the recipe from George Killian.
Yeah.
And we came back and brewed it and modified it a little bit for the American market.
Yeah.
And that was one of the richer craft beers. In fact, almost the start of a little bit of a craftiness in beer rather than just drinkability.
Sure.
And in fact, it was right after I left, I think, Australia in came to Australia in 81. That was really the start of the craft business.
Oh, yeah, totally.
In America.
Yeah. Oh, in America?
In America, yeah.
So 81 was the
sort of the start.
Okay,
I mean, that's when Ken Grossman started up the Sierra Nevada brew.
Wow. I mean,
other ones.
That beer is amazing. And that beer is just amazing. But also, I just saw the sheer size of the crop they had, and I was mind blowing. I can't believe they call that craft beer. I mean, in Australia, that would be a big brand.
No,
right?
it's a big brand back. And the thing about that brewery, it's so sustainable. It's so environmentally friendly.
Sure,
they've just gone out of their way. And Ken Grossman is a really nice guy.
Yeah,
and he's an engineer like myself. But and his son's working in the business now too, and his brother Steve, Steve Grossman, he's been out to Australia a few times.
Okay,
but they sort of set the standard for the American Pale Ale.
Yeah, totally,
very much so. And the Little Creatures Pale Ale was very much a copy of Sierra Nevada. Pale Ale. There
you go. I mean that was one of my favorite beers, but nowadays I can't. I don't drink a lot of pale ales. It's just. I want to drink more of it. Mm-hmm. And if I have, more than 2 or 3, I start feeling a little bit bloated and I'm like, I just want to have one more. But it's not like when I was younger where you can put away, 5 or 6, no problem, right?
Exactly. Oh, you're still young. I mean, I just celebrated my 74th birthday last week.
Oh, happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Happy birthday. No, I know. I just, I think your palate changes as time goes on, when you're, you sometimes go back to things that you like and then you develop new tastes and then you go back to another taste that you like. It changes from, year to year, I'd imagine.
Right.
So yeah, when you left Coors, you came to Australia. Is that sort of the timeline? You were headhunted by Tooths and Resch's?
Yeah. I wasn't looking for another job because I had a very good job at Coors.
Yeah, of course.
But Egon Zender contacted me and said, "Look, they're looking for a brewing professional familiar with the latest in brewing equipment because Tooths had embarked on a massive modernization program.
Yeah,
they wanted a brewing technocrat to be general manager of brewing to make sure that all their processes and their equipment, their procedures were in place.
Well, standard.
Yeah, standard. So that was my challenge.
Fantastic.
Coming across as a 35-year-old, to run that side of the business, and they were part of. They had Penfolds. They were part of Adelaide Steamship.
Yep. They were a big company back then.
John Spalvins.
Yeah,
really nice guy.
Sure. And you came here obviously by yourself at the time.
Yes,
you were. I think you mentioned that you were divorced.
I'd been divorced for a couple of years.
Was that difficult? I mean. Obviously, the divorce was tough on you, but also coming here alone Was that difficult? I mean, there's obviously the challenge of the professional side that you were looking forward to, but having essentially left your life back in the States.
Well, I mean, it was a bit of a challenge, but then I made certain that in my contract that they would bring the 3 daughters across every year.
Oh wow! You already had 3 daughters by then?
I had 3 daughters. Yeah.
God, that must have been
So that was a challenge right there.
Jeez, yeah.
And so they were coming across every year. And, they quite enjoyed it because they would come out during their wintertime in Colorado, and go on to the beaches. And, they continued to do that, of course. And as they got older, I think their biggest pickup line was the boys. My father runs a brewery,
and the guys were like, "Yes, I'm in." Wow,
that was a real challenge.
Yeah,
and then, but I mean, Australians are so friendly,
sure.
And so I met many people.
It must have been tough not being able to see your family all the time,
Yeah. Well, so I got to see them twice a year. I would go back every year to judge at the Great American Beer Festival.
Okay.
In September every year. Yeah. And then they'd be out here at Christmas time. So, I got to see them twice a year. So it wasn't too bad. It was good.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the difficulty with a lot of people who've, gotten to a certain level in their career. It's hard to, balance life and family and, whatever you may be doing. But in this case, it seemed like, they were happy and you were happy.
Yeah, it worked out well.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me about your time at Resch's and Tooths and Co. It's, you would have walked into back then. What that was, sort of 80s, early 80s, 81,
yeah, 81, 82.
Yeah, I mean, you would have walked into industrial relations nightmare.
I mean, we had 11 unions, any one of which could stop the brewery. And over a period of the first year, we narrowed that down to 2.
Wow. How did you manage that?
Working with the people.
Sure.
They had some very good people. I mean, I didn't do that. I wasn't a union basher or anything like that. No. I remember being taken to court by the Foreman and Supervisors Union. I remember talking to one of the supervisors and say, "Look, I wish we could award you on a performance basis." Oh, immediately, you're trying to get rid of our union.
Yeah.
I said, no, I'm just trying to get performance out of everyone.
Yeah.
But the biggest challenge, I think, with the automation and the eventual shutting down of the old Resch's brewery.
Yeah.
We were reducing manpower from 2,000 down to 700.
Wow, that's incredible.
And so it was incredible. And but I got to know a lot of people there. In fact, I was probably one of the first general managers that would actually go out and taste the beer to make sure the beer was right.
Wow, no way. So they didn't taste the beer?
No, they would taste it back in the lab maybe several hours afterwards, rather than going out and
I mean, that's your product.
And so I would arrive in the morning at 6:00, and the line was just starting up, and we would taste the beer and make sure that everything was right.
Yeah. Wow. So you really had to, change the culture, change the way of thinking, and also the way that people worked.
Yeah, and then we had certain traditions that had developed, and people were drunk on the job. They might have
that makes sense.
If they had a leak or keg, they could sit that in the corner and drink it. So we had to eliminate drinking on the premises.
Wow.
And we gave everyone a carton of beer a fortnight, I think it was.
Wow.
In exchange for that. But,
sure.
I mean, the standards that we have today just weren't around then.
No way.
And we were trying to set those things up.
Yeah. But I mean, you obviously came from a quality and recipe development sort of role into sort of now a general manager role, because that's a very different role from QA to now general manager, making sure that the people are happy, dealing with industrial relation unions problems and unions. I mean, how did you manage that? I mean, was that easy, or did you take it like
that was fairly easy. I mean, they had a very good support staff. I had a lot of good managers working for me.
Right.
I mean, it's not something I could have done by myself.
Of course.
It was just they just needed a leader that was willing to stand up and do some stuff. And they were very, very responsive. No, I look back on it now.
Yeah.
And then I was quite upset when they sold out to, once we had the other brewery shut down, we had the modernized brewery going. They sold out to Carlton United Brewery.
Yeah.
And they moved all their staff in. I remember the meeting with the general manager, and he said, "Look, I'm sorry, since it's really funny story I like to tell people, but he says, you haven't been brewing Foster's for the last 10 years, so obviously you don't know how to make good beer." And I said, "Oh, God." And so I was on for another month, and that was about it.
Wow.
And so back in late 83, I was trying to get the financing to start up my own brewery, because I figured there was a real need for something like that in Australia. And the positioning was going to be to brew a European-style lager and have it fresh in Australia. But I couldn't get the financing then.
Yeah. I mean, you went to Germany to try and do that. But just before we touch on that, I also wanted to talk about that time. The unions took you to court, or you took the unions to court. Which way? Oh, the unions took you to court. Yeah. So
we're just the foreman and supervisors.
Yeah.
They basically just slap my hands and it says, "Oh, some yank that doesn't know what's happening."
Right. So but during that time, you had death threats.
Yeah, we had some. Yeah,
God,
it was crazy.
Well, that would have affected you and the staff, no?
No, it was. I mean, you got over it fairly quickly.
Wow, who gets over death threats pretty quickly? I mean, that's pretty unique.
As long as you're still alive.
Yeah, I guess you couldn't just freak yourself out and not keep on going, right?
No.
Well, so that would have been a kick, a kick in the teeth. Obviously, once you've modernized everything, improved everything, and they just gone, see you later.
Yeah.
That would have been pretty painful, because it was a passion project for you, no?
Oh yeah, no, it was. But you can see it. They want to move their own staff in. I mean, that happens in all organizations, I think.
Sure.
The top guy is always going to get the chop.
No, I get it. So then you obviously went to Germany and you tried to get the contract for Lauenbrock?
Yeah. And then we couldn't get that. And then I had an opportunity to move back to the States with another brewery.
Sure.
But then I had met a woman who I had later married, that I didn't want to leave Australia. So I figured I was able to then get a job in New Zealand. I met Doug Myers, and he said, "Look, I've just bought controlling interest in 6 small breweries, lion breweries in New Zealand. Yeah. Will you come across and make sure we have all of our quality control and everything going properly?" And I said, "Well, I'll come across as a consultant for a year."
Sure.
Ended up spending over 3 years over there.
Wow. Yeah. So for some of the listeners who don't know, that Greg Myers, Doug Myers, essentially founded Lion Nathan Brewing Co. through those mergers and acquisitions.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was that's the beginning of Lion Nathan, I guess.
Yeah, it was the beginning of Lion Nathan. Yeah.
So you didn't get the chance to brew Lauenbrau in Sydney, in Australia. How do you take how do you deal with disappointments and things when they don't go your way, like when you got laid off from the Resch's job, the tooth job, and also then not being able to get the contract for Lauenbrau. I mean, they're kind of bit of downers, right?
Well, not really. I mean, you just look for the next challenge. There's always more of them out there.
That's a really good way to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, can't let one thing shut you down.
Yeah, sure. So in New Zealand, you helped them set up some systems and procedures and their brewery, correct?
Yeah, helping setting up a capital plan for the breweries, making sure we had the proper quality control systems in place, put in some new packaging lines, made them more efficient. Mm-hmm. And I did that as technical director, even though I was a consultant. Yeah. And that was, again, a very good team I was working with. Yeah. And I just tried to give them a little bit more direction. Sure. And had a CEO that was very responsive, and we got things through through the board.
Yeah.
And it's worked out well. And then after about 3.5 years, I was still working to get a brewery going in Australia, and I was able to get 3 Australian partners and got some financing.
Yeah.
And
was that difficult to try and find these partners? Because that's a really new that's a really new concept to do a boutique brewery back then.
Yeah, no, that was something else back then. But we were able to do that, and then I was able to leave Lion on very good terms, and we had a replacement come in. I worked part-time for a couple of months.
Sure.
At that same time, though, I was building my stainless steel fermenters in Auckland with a New Zealand company on stainless steel that we bought on the open market in Switzerland for a good price.
Yeah.
Manufactured in New Zealand, and we're able to bring it across without paying under closer economic relations. So no tax coming across into Australia. So we're able to fabricate most of the brewery over there while I was working part-time.
Okay, so that you saved costs.
You save cost on that. And in New Zealand with Lion Breweries, I'd been putting in a lot of new equipment, so I knew all the manufacturers.
And they did a good deal,
And they all wanted to be part of my new operation, so they gave me very good service on those things. And that's how we were, in fact, some of the delicate welding techniques that we put into the brewery at Camperdown were done by New Zealand craftsmen.
Wow.
They came across and put the brewery together.
That's amazing.
And so that was something else. But that was a major thing, coming back and buying a site in Camperdown. And developing that site, getting the brewery going. And so we had the brewery going in 1988. And that's the same year that Bernie Powers started up the Powers Brewing.
Yeah. Yeah, and Yamundi?
Yeah, in Yamundi, John Lynch started up the Yamundi Brewery. So we were the first 3 pseudo-craft breweries on the eastern seaboard.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. Why did you want to start your own business? Was it the fact that you just got sick and tired of working for people?
No, I think that I've always been creating new products and stuff, and this gave me an opportunity to really kick things off.
Do it for yourself.
Do it for myself. And then, I mean, I think a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot of people, I think some people start up breweries, and you can see it right away. They start up breweries because, I'm going to start up for a couple of years, make a lot of money, and then sell it off for a lot of money and be rich, And I never had thoughts like that. I just wanted to create something that I could enjoy, other people could enjoy, and maybe make the world a better place.
I mean, that's where, the funny thing is, that's where money comes from. People who actually are focusing on the things that they want to achieve in creation. And if they're passionate enough about what they do, the money always comes. But if you go in it for the money, then you're focusing on the wrong things. You start making decisions about brewing techniques for money. You just start buying equipment on the basis for money, and then the end product becomes something that it's not right. It's not what people enjoy, and it becomes a substandard product.
I mean, I think the same thing yourself, Jack. I mean, you created some of the perfect coffees in the world.
Sure.
And then you say, look, we're going to create this grounds establishment to let more people enjoy the craftsmanship.
No, totally.
So I think that's what it's about.
Yeah, it's absolutely what it's about. And for anyone who's out there listening who is doing anything in life, whether it's sport or whether it's a craft or whether it's anything they do in life, you have to do it because you got to enjoy it, right? If you don't enjoy it, you're doing it for the money, and if you're doing it for the money, eventually you're going to get annoyed and be upset that you're doing this Monday to Friday thing. I don't want to come into work on Mondays. I don't have and I'm sure you don't have a case of the Mondays, and you're still working at 74. You're still working at 74. You still enjoy it.
Yes, yeah.
For me, when Friday comes, it's kind of like, it's the weekend. I'm looking forward to Mondays because, when you enjoy what you do, I think that's really important. So, you finally got the brewery up and running. You got the money that you needed to. You got the backers that believed in you. I mean, I'm sure that that wasn't an easy task to convince these people to fork out some money to build a boutique brewery in an age where, the big brands really ruled, right?
Yep.
So you kind of started the brewery in really bad economic conditions, right? I mean, it was...
They couldn't be worse. I mean,
tell me about that.
Well, the budget of '88 was just horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, they implemented. We had a 20% sales tax on our wholesale price.
Wow.
Plus, we had like a 7 or 8% license fee.
Jeez.
It came first, and then on top of that, I mean, it was absolutely crazy. The taxes that we were paying to the government.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time with other brewers, even Blair Hayden from the brewery in Sydney, and down in Canberra, talking to the small business subcommittee. Can you help the small brewers out?
Sure.
Oh no, we got to be treated equal. And even though we were paying more taxes than the larger breweries, because our costs of manufacture are much higher.
Yeah.
And then we had the recession we had to have with the high interest rates.
Yeah, that was in 91,
92.
Yeah, 91, 92.
That was a crowning blow for the small brewers, I think.
That was a crowning blow for a lot of businesses, right?
Because we had to. I mean, we had some investment, but then we basically needed operating capital, so we basically built the brewery, sold some of the brewery back to the bank, so we had operating capital, and then it was just really tough times for us.
I mean, you were paying like what?
16,
mid-teens. 16, 17% interest rates.
On our overdraft.
That's insane.
And
it's like a credit card.
Yeah. And every time we had to pay excise of the day that we shipped something out of the brewery, I had to go down the next morning to Customs House, give them money for the excise.
Yeah.
And I might get paid 30 days later, if I got paid.
Yeah.
For the product that I'd shipped out. I mean, it was horrible.
Yeah. How did you guys survive?
And we were barely breaking even. And we went to the banks and we tried to negotiate with them for a lower interest rate and see if they wanted to take part of the business. They wanted to buy into the business at all. And they said, sign here, voluntary receivership.
Oh, geez.
This is the National Bank.
Yeah.
And it's funny, 6 months later, they got rid of the bank manager, that same bank manager, because he was screwing small business, but it was too late to us. We were already in receivership.
Yeah, you were in the ship. Yeah. I mean...
and the receivers came in and they looked at the business, and they said, we've never seen a business run so frugally in all our life. We'll just sign the checks with you and you can trade out of it. And there was a number of other people that wanted to buy into the business type thing.
That period would have been super stressful for you, right? I mean, you had, how many staff did you have at the time?
Oh, we had 8 staff, 8 or 9 staff, because we were doing our sales. We had close to 10 staff. Mm-hmm. And some of during receivership, some of the guys left, but we still had, we got a lot of publicity on the thing. I still remember the City Morning Herald had a big headline, Hahn Beer Shock. And so our sales went up. Yeah. And we ended up paying the receivers more than we would have paid the banks in interest during that period. Yeah. And everyone was coming in, other businesses coming in doing due diligence. And fortunately, the general manager at Tui's, I knew him, and he thought there was a real need for a premium brand such as Hahn. Mm-hmm. And he convinced Lion Nathan to buy in. And of course, they remembered the business, what I'd done for them over there. So
in New Zealand,
so they bought the business on condition that I worked for them for a number of years. Yeah. And so anyway, that's worked out well. I'm still working for them.
Yeah.
And so it's been good for everyone.
No, totally. I mean, that period of, uncertainty with the high interest rates and with, everything that was going on, that must have taken a toll on you, not just running the business, but you also had to think about, holy shit, are we going to survive here?
Yeah, no, it was a challenge. And I try not to worry too much about that. It probably worried my wife a lot more than it did me, but I knew eventually I was going to be successful. Yeah. And but thankful for her support. We got through the thing.
What gave you that belief? What made you think I'm going to get through this?
Well, I think when you when you grow up where you're moving around all the time, you're continually challenged with things, and you just learn to take those challenges on.
Yeah. Yep.
And I've never been afraid of doing different things, and that's that's certainly come through.
Yeah.
And that's why when Lion bought us, then Lion Nathan at the time, I became chief brewer for the whole group.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I had 3 breweries in New Zealand, 5 in Australia.
Yeah.
And then over the period of time, we put two into China. So I was spending some time in China.
Yeah, right.
In Wuxi and Suzhou.
Suzhou, yep.
And then at the end, in the later 90s, I wanted to get back to making my own style of beer again. I feel there was a niche for an English style ale.
Sure.
So I convinced the CEO to let me give up my job as chief brewer, go back to the original Hahn brewery.
Yeah.
And we were going to call it the Colonial Brewery. It's good we didn't call it the Colonial Camperdown Colonial Brewery.
Yeah.
But we were going to brew English style ales.
Sure.
And at that time, I discovered the James Squire story.
Yeah.
Which was just absolutely perfect. To fit in with Australia's first brewer who came here as a convict.
That's awesome.
And was quite an entrepreneur. And when he died, he was one of the richest men in the colony.
Yeah, wow.
But so it just fit in perfectly. And so it was an authentic story.
Yeah.
About an Australian that came here and did well.
Yeah.
And so we made great beer and brewed it in his honor, and with the endorsement, he had hundreds of descendants.
Wow!
So we contacted them, and through one person, a guy named Jim Donahue, who keeps in contact with all the descendants, and they're all first fleeters and everything, and we got their permission to brew a beer in his honor.
That's great.
So we
great story.
Tried to keep authenticity. Throughout the thing.
You back when you were in Lion, being the chief brewer, you obviously had to oversee lots of brewing operations.
Yes.
And the traveling obviously to China and to other countries like New Zealand, back and forth. Did you find any joy in that, or is that the part of the reason why you wanted to go off on your own again? Because in China, the style of beer would have been completely different to, what Australians were used to and what you probably have experienced. What kind of beer did you brew in over there?
Well, I mean, we were brewing a lager style. We weren't brewing any heavy, rich, crafty ales at all.
No.
They were all easy drinking beers.
Yeah. Can you say the brand?
I forget the names of the brands.
Sure.
Now. But we couldn't make money there because the government kept moving the goalposts for us. And so eventually we sold off the breweries.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's we don't own any breweries over in China now.
Yeah.
But so that was just a really a mistake that Lion Nathan made.
Yeah.
By investing in China.
Yeah, I mean, they had their state brewery, Qingdao, which is obviously massive.
Massive, yeah.
And I just remember, because I grew up in China, and I just remember that it was just everywhere. It was like water. The cost of the beer was, negligible. It was probably more expensive to buy, a can of Coke, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
It was, and the breweries were just held together with baling wire, basically,
Yeah.
And we were trying to put in a modern facility and make it efficiently and try to meet the costs. And so it was just amazing. And even though it was a wide open market, because the capita consumption back then was like,
huge.
15, 20 liters per person, not like 100 or 90 to 100 in the rest of the world.
Yeah.
So it was a huge opportunity.
But
we just couldn't compete.
Yeah. So, your desire burnt again, and you wanted to do your own brewery, and obviously James Squire started.
Yeah.
Started back where you started.
Yep. And we got that going.
Yeah.
And then I was always looking at other things to do too.
Sure. Yeah.
And we got that going, I think, and it was amazing. I mean, the first 10 years I was out promoting the beer all the time. I think we met back then in the early 2000 through 2010, I met. And I was out almost every night promoting the beer, doing beer dinners, giving talks. It was just amazing. All this personal selling that you have to do in a small business.
Absolutely. And you really got back down to the roots of why you...
And every craft brewer is doing that now.
Yeah, totally.
And I didn't give them lessons. I think they just kind of saw they had to do it themselves.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, Jack, when you look at, when we started the Hahn Brewery, there were like 35 breweries in Australia. 10 years later, we started up Squires. There were about 150.
Yeah.
And since 2012, the number has doubled.
Yeah.
We have over 700 craft breweries now in Australia.
That's crazy.
And they're able to sell directly from their breweries now. They can get retail licenses. Back then, we only could get a wholesale brewer's license.
Yeah.
So we had to sell to a wholesaler. And the retail margins are huge on beer.
Yeah, of course. And you guys really paved the way for craft beers in Australia.
I think we did. I think we did on that. And because what we found as we started up Squires, in order to get our full range of beers out there, we're making 5 or 6 different beers. We had to have cellar door operations, as you would.
Yeah.
And so we were able to work with others to set up the James Squire brew houses.
Yeah.
Where we had a small brewery making a little bit of beer, but probably 80% of the beer to that facility was supplied by the larger brewery.
Yes.
So we had the economies of scale there.
Yeah.
But we were able to have, 5 or 6 different styles of beer on tap, all under the same cover.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you couldn't do that in the pubs at that time. And in fact, I couldn't believe in the 80s, you walk into a pub in Sydney and you had 3 or 4 different beers on tap, and that was it.
Yeah.
And maybe 2, maybe 2 beers. Yeah. But now you walk into a brew pub or just an average...
even a bar.
20 to 30 different beers on tap.
Easily.
And you have to be quite sophisticated to order the right one.
Yeah, you're like, those 10 are new. What are those?
But as you made a comment earlier, though, you can't drink as much craft beer as you can the other beers like Hahn Super Dry.
That's right.
Because there's a lot of extra maltiness, hoppiness, and alcohol in them.
That's right.
And you can have 2 or 3. And but that's good. It brings moderation about drinking.
Yeah.
But it also gets Australians, and I've said this many times to people, get Australians to taste beer rather than just drink it.
Yeah.
Rather than just drinking for effect, for relaxation and refreshment, they're drinking it for relevance and reverence.
Yeah, which people are definitely starting to do. I really do believe that. I mean, that's why the craft movement has gone, through the roof in the last 10 years, because people want to taste now, And you can see in the last 5 to, roughly about the last 5 years, the whiskey scene has taken off.
Huge.
It's gone through the roof. And, stuff that I used to be able to buy, at bottle shops for, $80 and now $350 because they won an award. Or you can't even buy them now because it's just, crazy demand.
And a lot of the distilleries, they start up, of course, making gin first, but you can sell that straight away.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's almost like moonshine, you don't have to age it. But they just put in some special
botanics, and then it's gin.
It's about, choose the right botanics, and you can make all kinds of stories up about the botanics.
But it's really flavored moonshine.
Oh, yeah, that's what it is. But it allows the distiller to
make some money.
Make some money.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of making hand sanitizer now too.
Yeah. Well,
same thing.
Yeah, I know the distillery you're talking about, but no, it's really good. It's really great to see the whiskey side of things take off as well, because for a long time the beer was just on a rampage. It was, yeah. And we're talking about different breweries and who's the who's who and whatnot. And, one of my favorite beers, and I'm so sad that it's discontinued now, is the Napstein Lager.
Yeah.
That was no joke. My favorite beer of all time.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a lot. I mean, it was in a much smaller bottle. Mm-hmm. And I think I only ever came in a 4-pack.
Yeah, it was a 4-pack. And that was one of our brands.
Yes, yeah. I know. That was one of your beers. And I just went, that's my favorite. I'll keep on buying that, but now it's not available. It's very upsetting.
No, what happened on that? after we sold the winery, then they wanted to actually charge us all kinds of money for leaving the brewery there. So it was it was just crazy. And that brand, you look at it, and it was a fantastic brand because it was one of the first Pilsner styles or lager. It was late hopped with New Zealand, the special hop that gives almost a Sauvignon Blanc.
It was so fragrant, but also so easy to drink at the same time. It was just when I first had it, I thought, what am I drinking here?
Yeah. I mean, the hop was called Nelson Sauvin, and it gave you that really unique flavor.
Yeah,
and in the brewery itself, I had bought out of. It was a brewery in Wangaratta that had gone out of business. A German brew house, a copper brew house. It was magnificent, laid out about a 1,500 hectoliter, a 1,500 liter brew house. Just really nice design. I bought it out of a paddock because it had gone out of business, been stored there, and we were able to install it. And we developed it as the winemaker's beer.
Yeah.
Where in reality, looking at it in the past, we could have kept that same positioning, but we didn't go out and put it on tap, which we should have. Yeah. We tried to make it too elite. And if we'd gone out tap at the same time, get more people drinking it, I think we'd still have that brand there.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was a great brand.
Oh, I loved it. I really did. Just quickly going back to, don't worry about that. Just quickly going back to the James Squire, at the beginning there, I just remembered you did tell me once that you only had $1 million budget, or you couldn't lose more than $1 million in the
first year. Yeah,
in the first year.
Yeah. Well, it was costing Lion about just under $1 million a year to keep the brewery running.
Wow.
In Camperdown, but even though it was doing a lot of, and that's as a cost center.
Sure.
Not as a profit center.
Yeah.
So it was still producing things. And if you looked at probably the net cash flow was probably positive, but as a cost center, it was costing about $1 million. So we said, as long as you don't lose more than $1 million the first year, you can continue to run it. So we lost $960,000 the first year, broke even the second year, and made $1 million profit the third year.
Wow.
And
that's really cutting it fine.
Yeah, and so that's cutting it fine, but I think it proved to the business that you can run a pioneering operation in a large corporation.
Of course.
And the thing I made certain, because it's always, the large animals eat their young sometimes.
Yeah, totally.
And so that was the key thing, was be able to keep the business separate.
Yeah. Yeah, and have that entrepreneurial, ability to move and maneuver.
Yeah.
And being agile. So was it hard to convince Lion to say, hey, leave me the hell alone and let me do my own thing?
Yeah, it was hard at first. And then they found out that we could become profitable.
Yeah.
And then we became even more profitable when we started to use them as our distributors. Because initially we used a separate distributor.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, of course, the real profit from an operation like that comes when you're able to scale up those brands to a larger brewery and then have the distribution network of Lion.
Yeah.
That was the secret to our success.
I mean, of course, you could instantly go from small to large very quickly.
Yeah.
And
be able to produce new products on a fairly tight budget and a tight timetable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what happens when you get corporized too much. It takes forever to do things.
To do anything, yeah. And that must have been one of the key motivating factors for you to say, hey, leave me alone, otherwise this will never get off the ground.
Yeah. And then I find even now, after I've been able to pull back from those operations. Now, I still try to direct a lot of different things, but things operate a lot slower.
Yeah.
But we're much bigger now, too.
Yeah.
And that's why I think we started up the Kosciuszko Brewery.
See,
a while back.
You're going back to your roots now to near the snow.
Near the snow. And we got a little brewery and a little pub, the Banjo Patterson Hotel in Gingerbine, just across from the lake. And again, it was a 600-liter brew kit where we developed brands. I have assistant brewer down there, but I still try to go down there.
Sure.
We've got a unit down there, so it gives me a good excuse to go down there.
Yeah, I mean...
And maybe have a ski and a few other things. Yeah. And drink beer with the locals.
And that was in 2009, right?
That was 2009, and it really started going. I mean, we were very low key for the first couple of years, and then everyone wanted to have more of it back in Sydney. And so we started to brew it at the Malt Shovel Brewery.
Oh, okay.
It got too big for that, so we started to brew some at the Little Creatures Brewery in Geelong.
Yeah, wow.
And now the keg volumes are so much, we even brew some of those at Tooheys now.
Wow.
And so we're doing, with that little brand, something like 300,000 liters a month.
That's insane. I mean, you definitely know what people want, right, out of a beer. And you try and add new and different elements to every new brand that you create. I mean, just in the James Squire range, I mean, you've got several different, lines that are really popular. I mean, the 150 Lashes is probably my favorite out of the whole line. But then
that leads the market too. That leads the craft beer market.
And you've got the Nine Tails and the darker beer that you've brought here, which I'm absolutely going to have.
Jack Spade's Porter, and then we have a new one out, Hop Thief 10, which is something we've changed the hops on it every year.
Oh wow!
And we put it in a can for the first time this year.
Amazing.
And a special hop from the States called Sabro hop, which was discovered in the mountains of New Mexico.
Wow.
And which adds a very unique flavor to it.
Sure.
But it's different beers, but I've always kept moderate alcohol levels. I mean, our highest alcohol level, maximum on some of the brands, might have been 6%.
Sure.
Most of them highly drinkable, 4.2 to 5%.
Yeah.
So moderation and enjoyment is still key to what we want, rather than some of our craft brewers. I mean, they make some great beers. Modus Operandi.
Yeah.
Fantastic beers, but a lot of them are 7-8%.
8%, yeah. I think they're up in Northern Beaches, no?
Yeah, on Northern Beaches in Monavale.
Yeah.
They got a small brewery there. They make great beers.
Great beer, yeah.
Their former tenant, which has taken a lot of awards, is a Imperial Red IPA.
Okay.
Very red colored, but highly hopped, high alcohol, not a session beer.
No. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like some of the craft brewers, and this goes in coffee too, craft coffee as well, specialty coffee and craft brewers, I think some of them have really missed the point on what people want. Steve Jobs once famously said in one of his interviews, I try and design things from what I think the customers want and their experience, and then I design it backwards. But I think some of the craft brewers might have gone the other way around. What I'm going to like and what I'm going to put out into the market, and then he ends up being so far out of the range of what people enjoy. And now a lot of the craft guys are coming back to the lighter side and back to the craft lagers now.
Oh yeah. I think what drives that a little bit. I mean, I remember trying to judge every year at the Great American Beer Festival. I was always challenging the U.S. brewers, and I said, "Look, you guys are running IPAs that are 7-8%, and then 90 bitterness units of hops. People can't drink much of it. And all of you say, well, my IPA is bigger than your IPA. So they're finally coming back around to that. You want to make a drinkable product so that people can come into your pub. They can have a couple of them, a couple of pints of it, stay reasonable, and continue and buy a dinner and be around for a while and spend some money, not just get pissed.
Yeah. Or have 2 or 3 and go, wow, that was too much flavor, or that was too floral, or that was, And one of the things with beer, I'm not one of the things with coffee, I'm not sure if it applies. Maybe it does, but a good sign of a really amazing coffee is when the roaster tastes the coffee as it cools. So, most people don't scull their coffee in one go, and most people don't drink their coffee really quickly, right? They kind of take their time, and half the coffee is kind of lukewarm. So what we like, or what I like, is the coffee has to hold its flavor as it cools down.
Yes.
Normally, when the coffee doesn't taste as good, and you find that kind of bitterness at the end, and sort of the astringent flavors, for me, that's not really that's not doing your your job properly as a coffee roaster, because
Exactly,
you're not you're ignoring half of the drink, right? So as beer drinkers, again, there's a lot of liquid. And when you get to sort of when you're talking and you're having fun or whatnot, and when you're left with half of the beer, and that's starting to warm, and I often find a lot of the craft beers, they taste quite, either sour or acidic or whatnot, and it's just really hard to finish the second half of the beer.
I agree with that. The beer and I think that's it's got to be a transition there. Because as it warms up, the flavor intensity increases.
Yeah.
And so, as you were saying, if it's really intense when it's cold, it's bloody intense when it gets warm. And so you don't want that. You want a drinkability factor there, and you want a smoothness. And I think sometimes with some of these sour beers, they're almost trying to taste like a lemonade or something.
Yeah.
And I still don't like the sour beers.
Neither do I.
Actually, I've worked all my life to keep the bacteria, Pediococcus and Lactobacillus out of the brewery.
Yeah.
Because they detrimental to the beer flavor. But you can actually buy mixed cultures of those to put in.
Yeah.
I'm just totally against that.
Yeah.
But, that's a very good point you're making there. That it's got to be drinkable to the bottom of the glass.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you now spend your time between Sydney and Kosciuszko, at the brewery from time to time. Is there any other plans for that particular brand? Are you maybe thinking about launching new lines or?
Well, I was going to stop by the brewery on the way here, but I ran out of time. But I've just developed a dark mountain lager for Kosciuszko.
Great.
And we have some at the brewery because we brewed it a couple of weeks ago, and I kegged it last week at the brewery and bought at the brewery in Gingerbine, and brought a keg back to the brewery. And so the crew at the brewery are tasting it now. They're enjoying it. But we're looking at a different brand. But it's been 10 years with just one single brand.
Yeah.
But we got a lot of other little breweries we're looking at through Lion. We started one up. Well, Yamundi continues to grow.
Yep.
We got the Tiny Mountain Brewery in Townsville.
Wow.
And that's a little bit larger brewery we've put in up there. But we're all about creating authentic brands, not going out and spending a lot of money buying a brand someone else has developed.
Sure.
And then you lose the character of it because they take their money and run. So we've been developing these brands. We have a couple more that we're developing. I can't really talk about it now. But they're and we've got one out in Perth that we developed. It's a small brewery right in the stadium there.
Yeah, wow.
And it's going very well. And of course, we've got the Little Creatures brands. One at the brewery in Fremantle, the brewery in Geelong.
Yeah.
We've got the White Rabbit Brewery where we do a lot of barrel aging. And White Rabbit Dark. We've had a sour and a couple other ones there. But so we're looking at
lots of different things.
Little niche markets, but it's all about flavor.
Yeah,
and delivering on that flavor. But we also like to deliver on drinkability. And I think that's why 150 Lashes is. But there's a big story on 150 Lashes. You probably heard it. James Squire was a home brewer. He started brewing a beer immediately, and he was he's always giving out beer to the people of authority, probably not as bribes, of course, but and he was arrested. He'd been here about a year, arrested for stealing some material for hopping the beer, and sentenced to 300 lashes, 150 immediately, 150 later if he survived.
Wow!
So he took 150. We reckon he had a lenient lasher who was already onto his beer, so he survived that, and then he bribed him. So he never got the last 150 lashes. So that's why we call it 150 Lashes Pale Ale.
Yeah, that's such a great name.
Again, an authentic story.
Yeah. And that's one of the most iconic beers in Australia now.
Yeah, and we tried to link it back to, and again, that's brewed with 3 different hops to give it a really unique hop character to it. And
no, that's really, really great.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
And I think the key, another thing we've talking about many times is matching beer with food.
Yeah.
Trying to get people just putting their beer down when they start at dinner, but have different beers with different foods.
Yeah. And more and more people are doing that now. It's not just a piss up anymore.
Yeah.
Like with craft beer, you can really do match. We were talking about earlier before we started that the porter can, go really well with, a cake or the chocolate mud cake.
Chocolate mud cake, but it could also go with a rich meat goulash.
Yeah, or a meat pie,
and even a rich Pacific oyster.
Yeah. No, so it's definitely become much more of a flavor enjoyment rather than just down it.
Yep, for sure.
So no, that's really really awesome. I actually wanted to ask you, why did you do the Kosciuszko in the first place? I know that you can use it as an excuse to go skiing, but it seemed such a random off. It's so left field of what you've done.
Yeah, I think it was more having spent 20 years in Colorado before I came out here. I just had this extra desire to have something up in the mountains that would draw me back there.
Yeah.
I mean, we live in Coogee, so we have a nice, we have ocean views from our home in Coogee, and then it's nice to be in the mountains looking out across Lake Gingerbine.
Yeah.
And so again, I think one of the reasons I went into brewing, it was quality of life.
Yeah,
it's a different
that's so great
quality of life, and it's really lovely to drink beer with the locals.
Oh, absolutely. No, I think that's it's a wonderful career that you've built, and you're still going, and you're still enjoying it, and all the more success to you.
Well, thank you.
No, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your story today.
Okay.
And here's an interesting fact: Mount Kosciuszko was named after Mound Kosciuszko in Krakow, Poland.
Yeah, that was a burial tomb of General Kosciuszko.
Yes.
And General Kosciuszko was a freedom fighter.
Yes.
There are more monuments for General Kosciuszko in the U.S. than there are in Poland.
No way. Well, he was, I think he was a Lithuanian-Polish freedom fighter, no?
Yeah, and he was good friends with Thomas Jefferson.
Oh, there you go.
But he was also an architect, and he designed West Point, the military academy in America.
Wow, there you go.
So, yeah, he's very, very, and it was a Polish surveyor that saw Mount Kosciuszko and said, that's the tallest mountain. It looks like the burial tomb, so we're going to name it.
Well, maybe that, there might be something for your next line of Kosciuszko beer.
Well, the surveyor was Edmund Strzałski.
Yes.
Was his name. Yeah.
Pavel? No, Pavel?
Pavel, his first name.
Edmund, Pavel, I think was his, Pavel Edmund Kosciuszko.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah. Wow.
But, we've supported the descendants of Kosciuszko. They have and we've provided them with beer for their conferences and stuff like that.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so great. No.
So we had to try that local element.
Yeah. No, fantastic. No, really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. And I'll absolutely make my way to the Malt Shovel Brewery. And for anyone who lives in Sydney, please go and check it out. I mean, it's such a great facility.
Yeah, of course, the brewery's not open to the public right now.
Yeah, of course.
But the Squire's Landing, which is the end of the International Overseas Terminal at Circular Quay.
Oh, yeah.
That's open.
Yes.
That has a little brew house in it. And
amazing.
They have all the beers on tap.
Go check it out.
It's fantastic. So
check
it out.